Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Kason. And I'm very excited.
We got past Kilika Temple. We can actually talk about things.
So it's supposed to be episode 1, it ended up being episode 4?
Yeah, I think we got through 4 before we got there. I think we'll be moving faster now, though.
Oh, I think so too.
The plan today is to get all the way through Luca to the Mian High Road.
To Mian, yeah, exactly.
So let's get started.
All right.
So let's see. We ended on Lulu sort of like being really condescending, rude.
Yes, to
Waka.
Yeah.
There's actually, I was watching that again today, and there was another element to this that I hadn't remembered or considered last time we talked about it. She says something about like, Chapu's never coming back. But then she goes on to say, nor is Sir Jekt, or Braska for that matter. And there's a part of me that wondered if that comment was directed at Yuna instead of Waka. Because like, Waka's not concerned about whether Jekt is still alive or whatever. Jekt is Tidus's
connection.
Dad.
Yeah.
And Braska is...
It's almost like she's laying it out there for everybody.
It's like, all of you stop with the nonsense.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting, because I thought that whole tirade was sort of like directed at Waka.
You know, I did
originally.
too.
But now there's a part of me that thinks she's just telling everyone to like stop, like move on already.
Well, if that's the case, even if it's not the case, this is the first time we see her more or less lose her cool.
Yeah.
And the way you put it right there, it makes it make a little more sense in that regard than the way I saw it previously, where it's like, no, she really did lose it, kind of on everybody.
Yeah.
And that, I don't think from here, even to the rest of the game, I don't remember if she loses it quite like that. She's so composed, you know?
Yeah. And like, Yuna kind of runs after her right after that, because the camera does shift on to Yuna for a second there.
Well, does that make me wonder then? Maybe they'd spoken in the past and maybe Yuna harbored some types of feelings of seeing her father again.
Yeah.
Right? We know that in the very least, she's trying to follow in her father's footsteps.
Yes.
So you know that the desire is there to at least emulate him if she can't be with him.
Yeah. And the fact that Yuna is sort of gravitating toward Tidus here.
Yes.
And the connection there with Sir Jekt's son and all this. And
yes.
I think Lulu's trying to tell everyone, like, stop trying to connect to these people that are gone now.
Yes.
Like, let it go.
Which is an interesting thing for a religious person to say.
Yes.
But her ideas about the religion are maybe not quite like Waka. She's not as devout as Waka is. Waka is just like to a T.
So anyways, it was just an extra point there.
That's cool. I like that.
Upon watching the scene again, I was like, oh, I had forgotten she had said, nor is Sir Jekt or Lord Braska or whatever his title is for that matter. Anyway.
She's getting fed up with all that.
She's pissed. So you go to the Kilika Temple, you get confronted by the Luca goers for some reason.
That was so good. That was so great. Those guys are so classic, just stereotypical. They're the bullies on the playground, just like straight up.
I kind of wonder like what they're doing there. I know that
I thought they were with the summoner, but it turns out she only has one guardian, so they're not related.
So
the only reason I thought they were connected is because they're both complete like jerks.
Yes.
They're both horrible people, and I'm like, oh, they must have been together.
Yes. So like I understand for like a storytelling purpose why it's there. It's meant to set up, this is the team that we're rivals with and that we're gonna face, later at the arena, the tournament. I don't think it needed to be done at Kilika. That could have been done in Luca, right?
Sure,
like
where they get confronted.
So I'm not sure, because the Luca goers are from Luca. That's like the city you're going to next.
What are they doing here?
Why did they come to Kilika Temple? Maybe somebody knows the answer to that. I'm not saying there isn't a reason. I just don't know what the reason is, if there is one, other than they just wanted at this point to introduce this rivalry and be like, and so that Tidus can say, oh, putting people down, they're just as bad as my old man, right?
Right.
And Yuna responds to that, but Sir Jekt was a kind and gentle man. And he's like, well, not my Jekt. So kind of reinforcing this idea.
He still doesn't believe that they're the same person.
Yeah.
That her Jekt and his Jekt.
They can't be if they're that different.
Exactly.
Like, I'm telling you, like, my old man is not like that. So, I don't know. Anyways, it's kind of a funny scene, though.
It is.
Then he says, even 10 years after he left, just thinking about my old man got me angry. But maybe that was just my way of keeping him, nah.
Yeah.
So
that was good. He was this close to a moment of self-realization,
Yeah.
right? And then he puts it off. But you can tell, at least at this point, the fact that he even went there, the wheels are starting to turn in his mind. And he's starting to wonder if maybe he does have a closer connection to his father and does have some longing for his father that he is just unaware of.
Yeah. So whatever abuse he feels he suffered, right, there's still a part of him that wants reconciliation, the longing for that, right? It's still there somewhere, but he's kind of denying it.
Yeah, but I like it. It shows subtle character growth.
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah. So then you go into the temple, and this is where you're confronted by Donna, the other summoner.
Just seeing her was, my wife just like gasped. She was like, what? What is this game? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. What the heck? But she, and she is just horrible. She's horrible.
Yeah, it's kind of like both of these instances are just kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like tropey bully characters, right?
Very much. Yeah, and back to back,
Yeah.
it does feel kind of weird.
So, Waka is confronted by the Luca goer bullies.
Yeah.
And then Yuna's confronted by another summoner bully.
Yeah. And pretty stereotypical, pretty flat character, bully characters.
It's strange to me how she attempts to mock her. For me, it would just like bounce off. Like, how is that insulting?
I know, it's like not even that bad.
Because she's like, oh, like so many guardians. Like, why do you have so many? I only need one.
Yes.
Your father only needed two. Why do you bring so many with you?
Yeah.
Like, how could you not want as many competent guardians as possible?
Seriously.
Trying to defeat Sid.
I know, it's like, well, I can get by with one. It's like, what are you doing? Get more.
Why would you not want like 12, 20, whatever, that if they're all like competent, if they're all qualified, that would be better than one in any circumstance. So it's just weird. I don't know.
But so it's a weird thing to get upset about, but we did just mention the whole connection with Braska and how Yuna wants to basically be as similar to her father as possible. Yeah. And Donna's kind of poking at her saying, hey, you're nothing like your father.
That's probably true.
And maybe that's what got to Yuna even more than just like the stupid insult. It's just like, hey, you're not like your dad.
Right.
And so she's like, whoa, hold up. Hold up.
Oh, she handles it really well.
Oh, she does, yeah.
So
she's like, these are my friends.
I bring only as many people as I can trust, and I would never question your ways, So can you just leave us in peace?
Yes.
She handles it with a lot of grace.
Yes.
Which speaks a lot to her
so much grace
character.
to where I thought that Donna might actually, do a little bit of an about face and stop being such an annoying character after that, which she does not.
Yeah, in fact.
But Donna kind of is okay. She's like, whatever, let's leave. She didn't make it into a bigger thing.
That line is one of the most awkwardly delivered lines I've ever heard, because it's like when they spliced the two lines together or something, they didn't put a space between it. So it's like she barely ends the first sentence and then the second one starts right on. I kind of wrote it in the way that it's like delivered.
You do what you want, Bartella, we're leaving.
You do what you want, Bartella, we're leaving. It's just like, it's like so
it's
fast.
all part of the same thought.
Yes,
almost.
It's just like blah.
Now, I don't think that it was that way in the Japanese, at least
Probably
in the deliverance, or the delivering of the line. But I almost wonder if the English, they just had to fit too many words into that short space.
To like scrunch it in.
Like, But this wasn't an FMV, so they should have.
Yeah, they're not like lip syncing.
I think that was just a mistake. Yeah.
It was, I don't know, just funny the way it was delivered. You do what you want. Bartella, we're leaving.
Bartella, we're leaving.
Anyway, so they're going into the Cloister Trials.
So
Tidus
real quick, I do want to mention the mandala at the center of this temple because it's not like the Bhed one.
It's a different one.
It's quite different. And the one in Bhed, it's actually kind of refreshing for me because I was like, man, maybe I'm reading too much into the Bhed mandala because it's like it's all there. And some of these other mandalas, let's see if I can find the same types of symbolism there. Yeah. And they're so different. I can't at all do what I was able to pull from the Bhed mandala. I can't pull almost any of that. There's still some of it with the square circle imagery, but it's clearly saying something very different in this temple, which is more about, in fact, most of the patterns are pretty nonsensical. It's not perfectly symmetrical because there's that letter in the center, and then there's tons of basically just the waters and fires of chaos going all around up to the middle circle. You know, there's not as much meaning there. I mean, it's still meaningful, but it's not saying as many things, right? And so then I jump back to the Bhed one, and I'm like, it's definitely intentional the way the Bhed one is set up. So, but this one's really super different. Cool. But which summon was this temple? I actually kind of forget. Ifrit, okay.
Well, if there's a lot of fire in it, that would make sense.
Well, exactly, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like all the flames and then the center icon and all that. So
if it's chaotic and if it's got fire imagery, it's probably somehow representative of Ifrit in some way.
Yeah.
I would assume, and again, I didn't check this, that would probably be the same summoning circle that appears when Ifrit is summoned.
The mandalas at the temple are always bigger and more complex than the ones when they're summoned, but it's similar. And I think it still has that same letter. It's not English or Japanese, but there's still that symbol at the very middle that I think is the same.
Gotcha. So they head into the cloister trials. Tidus cannot go because he's not a guardian yet. So they're like, you got to stay out. But then Donna comes back. And
oh yeah, we didn't mention, her guardian is just this really buff, just this huge like giant.
Yeah.
Basically.
Big burly.
And he doesn't
speak,
talk or think much. He just kind of does things, right? But yeah, he steps in and he just throws us back onto the platform.
Yeah, and I think the reason she's doing this is because they mentioned earlier Yuna could be punished for someone not a guardian in her retinue going in with her. So this is clearly Donna trying to like get her excommunicated or get her in trouble by forcing Tidus to go in.
So Donna may feel somewhat threatened by Yuna's abilities. So. Well, especially Yuna's Braska's daughter. It's like, okay, we got to take care of this girl so that I can get all the praise, you know, for doing the thing. But also, it's interesting to me that Tidus goes through with it.
Yeah.
Like, is there not a way to get back up?
Is
there not a way to stay there?
Because it's just an elevator, unless they just unless there's a contraption up there where they can keep the elevator down and not let it back up or something. I don't know. Because that was my first thought, just go back up.
I know, why do we have to go all the way to the Holy of Holies?
You don't
just
have
stay
to
back
open
there.
the door and go through. Just stay on the elevator or something. I don't know. But I mean, it's Tidus. He's like, I'm just going to do this, I guess.
I know, because he doesn't care, because he has no respect or even understanding for their religious customs.
Right.
So he's like, it's not a big deal.
It's something to do. It's a puzzle. I'll figure it out.
Exactly. That's great.
So anyways, once you complete that cloister, and going kind of into the inner sanctum there. This is where we get some exposition about the faith. Waka brings it up because Tidus asks, what's inside of the Holy of Holies room that Yuna goes into?
Yeah.
What's in there?
Now, this is what I did not understand when I first played the game.
Yeah.
And I get that it's explained here, like, okay.
Yeah.
But when I first played the game, and with the word faith being not a collection of objects or of people, it didn't quite make sense to me. And because I kind of missed understanding exactly what the faith was at the beginning of the game when I first played it, it actually made it very difficult for me to understand exactly what was going on later on in the game as the faith take a different kind of role. But it's really important to understand what the faith is. It's not faith. It's not faith at all. Kind of like sin isn't really sin.
It's not F-A-I-T-H.
Exactly.
It's F-A-Y-T-H.
Yes. But hearing the Japanese for that word, it's just a completely different word entirely.
Oh, really?
And they say it's inorigo, which means like prayer or praying. Inori is like a prayer. Well, inorigo sama is what they say. And so like san, if you hear people saying san, well, sama is like the really respectful version of san.
Yeah.
So they're clearly referencing people. When they say inorigo sama, that just means the people who pray.
Huh.
That's what it means. But then in English, there's this word, the faith, and it's
different.
You have to really understand the definition of that to really get what they're talking about. Whereas in the Japanese, it's pretty straightforward. Inorigo sama, like the people who pray. And inorigo, because ko is like the children kanji, so it could be the sons of those who pray. But anyways, it's that same kind of thing. It's just the people who pray. and it's so straightforward. And it's kind of cool that they call it the faith, but I feel like if they were going to make a change like that, that there should have been a few more points where they explain what it is than just kind of this part.
Yeah.
And maybe the few lines they give to it isn't quite enough. Now, I got it this time, having played the game already, but anyways,
yeah,
it's difficult. It was difficult for me.
I'm like we said last time, we're saving spoiler conversation
Exactly.
stuff to the end of the podcast. So I'm trying to like sort of dance around that a little bit in response to that without giving away
But Lulu
too
does
much.
say a thing or two about...
Yeah, so I took down her line.
Okay, good.
She says, the faith are people who gave their lives to battle sin. Yevon took their souls willingly given from their still living bodies. Now they live forever trapped in statues. But when a summoner beckons, the souls of the faith emerge once again. That's what we call an aeon. So the faith, just know that like there's going to be more explained about this as
Later
you go
on,
throughout the game. But this point you're speaking on was one I was confused about my first playthrough as well.
Yeah.
Just there's certain like there's a certain nature to it all that just kind of like went over my head a little bit. But
like when it says those who give their lives in battle, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's an act of faith.
yes,
Right.
right.
So it just kind of went over my head, as opposed to them saying, no, it's the people. It's not what they did. It's them.
Yes.
Right. Anyways.
So the faith are basically people who willingly gave their lives to kind of be put into these statues in these holy of holies inside the temples,
Yeah.
where they live forever, and they're a part of the summoning process. So when a summoner brings an aeon, like the faith are involved in that.
Yeah. Yep.
So that whole process involves these faith, which are people that are sort of like their souls are merged with these statues. That's what
Yep.
explanation we get for now.
We'll understand more
We'll
later.
carry on more with that later, right? Anyway, I liked this line from Tidus. He says, there was something I didn't tell anyone else that day. That song we heard there in the temple, the hymn of the faith, right?
Yeah.
Those singing voices, that kind of chorus. I knew it from my childhood. It was proof that Spirit and Xanarkin were connected somehow. At least to me it was. Maybe that's why suddenly I felt like I just wanted to go home. I tried to say something to them, but the words wouldn't come. So that melody, that hymn of the faith he's hearing in the temples, he's like, that is a song I remember from Xanarkin.
He remembers that song, yeah.
Holy
So
crap.
it's just another little connection, right? So the music is clearly diegetic, right? It's part of the world. It's not just the soundtrack.
Yes.
So who is singing?
Maybe it's the faith themselves.
That's what I think.
I think the faith is singing.
That's what I think. Now, one of the comments from our last podcast, 2 podcasts ago, I suppose, episode 3, mentioned that it's actually a slightly different recording. Each time you hear
it's a little different.
the hymn of the faith, or what do they call it, this song, it's a slightly different sound to it, as if there are different people singing it at different points.
Right.
So this kind of is a little bit of a callback to like a Hindu type religion, with the Om, kind of the idea of maybe a chant or some type of song that is sung within a temple that resonates throughout the whole temple, that one person will be doing breathing exercises and kind of, singing this song. But the idea of the Om, as was explained to me by a Hindu person many years ago, he said that during the time while you're making the sounds, while you're singing and that song, while you're doing your Om, is your heart, your body, your mind, everything is at peace and is held in like a tranquil state within time, basically. So the idea is, if you can do it forever, you would theoretically live forever, right? Because no one can do that, but a lot of people will work on it and try to, elongate how long they can make this sound. And the idea being that if they can sing this song, basically, that they can, extend their life and become one with the world and completely at peace, in harmony.
Wow.
And I kind of get some of that with the faith here, with the fact that they're always singing this song, and it's a constant thing, and it's a callback, and from as far as I can tell, it's a call back to the Om, the idea of the Oms from Hindu religion.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure the faith of the one seen.
Yeah, it's beautiful though.
Yeah, and so the important thing though is that Tidus recognizes this song. He's heard it before from Zanarkand. So more on that later.
Cool.
As they're coming out, he's thinking, I thought I had put my feelings for Zanarkand behind me, but they were there and they grew inside me bigger and bigger till I was just about ready to burst. So he's feeling
homesick.
Yeah, homesick, depressed, and Yuna tries to. She sees that he's struggling. She comes over, and is like, "Hey, is everything okay? Like, what do you want to do?" And he's like, "I just want to scream." He just yells. I liked that.
And this is a good lead up to maybe a scene later on where Yuna's trying to get us to blend in, or not blend in, to kind of let it out, but in a different way.
Yeah.
She'd rather us laugh than scream.
Yes, right.
But,
we're going to talk about that.
This is kind of a beginning to that. Both scenes are related, right?
Kind of building up to it,
yeah.
right?
But right before that, as soon as Yuna walks out of the temple, she gets hounded by a bunch of people.
Oh, yes.
Like tons of people show up. And this is kind of a theme throughout the game. There are always, people are interested in Yuna. People know who Yuna is. She's incredibly famous.
Yeah.
This was actually this was also one of the comments that I read in the last couple episodes ago, mentioned that Tidus and Yuna have this similarity, right? That they're both the descendants. And we'll talk about this because they mentioned this on the boat.
Yeah.
But they're both the children of these really famous people, right? But Tidus having this moment where he sees her being hounded by people and just like congratulated, no, we love you so much, thank you so much. But then he has a flashback right then about himself being the star Blitzball player and how people were all around him.
That's right. He's doing all these animations.
and now no one knows who he is at all.
He's not famous
But
anymore.
here she is. It's like the fame that he once enjoyed is transferred to this person. And he can see a similarity, I think, between the two of them. Yeah. And that will lead us to the conversation they have on the boat later.
Yeah.
But that was a cool moment.
So basically from there you just head back to the port and you leave Kilika to head to Luca. Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that happens here on the boat, but one thing we forgot to mention that was in my notes that I skipped over on accident was you go into the engine room of this ship.
Yeah.
And there's all these chocobos like running on wheels or treadmills, or I can't remember what it is. Anyways, they're the ones generating the power that moves the ship, right?
Yes.
And something that's very interesting that I don't want to like comment on in depth, but Tidus seems to be very confused by this. Like,
very much so.
What is this? And the person who's like, I don't know what you would call her, she's like the one who works in the engine room, she's like, there's chocobo power.
Yeah, what's
like,
your deal?
It's almost as if Tidus doesn't like know what a chocobo is.
He's never seen, and as I commented, I think in episode 2, there are no animals. There is no nature in Zanarkand, where Tidus is from. There was no plants, there's no nature, there's no nothing. It's just water and metal and buildings, Right. And so this is probably the first time he's ever seen a chocobo. So not only what is this thing, but also what is it doing, and is this really how you guys run things? This is crazy.
Yeah. Anyways, a really interesting little moment. Yeah. Just wanted to point it out along the way because it was something I had meant to say but didn't.
Yep.
Okay.
The music that plays as soon as we get on the boat.
Oh yes.
The dee-dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee-dee, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yes, it's a leitmotif of Tidus's theme.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song.
Yeah,
it's
like
really, really cool. And it's almost like a Spanish classical guitar kind of sound to it. Yeah, I love it. It's so, so good. And it really sets the mood for this. It's a very comfortable feeling boat ride,
Yeah.
Nothing's going to go wrong this time, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's really intimate together,
And there's a lot of good conversations here. You kind of come out from underneath the deck, right? And you go up the stairs and you can listen in, like sort of eavesdrop on a conversation between Lulu and Waka several times.
Yes, yes.
You just keep walking back up and like the conversation continues.
Yes.
So they're basically talking about him. They're talking about Tidus and like, what are you really just going to leave him there in Luca or whatever, And it's like, well, like maybe he can join another Blitz team or something. And she's talking about, well, Yuna wants him to be a guardian.
I love that because you start leaving. Well, I did.
Yeah.
And then it's like, Guardian, what the heck? Anyways.
Yeah.
And then you hear that. And it's
like
off guard takes him off guard a little bit. And then, but Lulu's so interesting because she says, whose fault is this, right?
Yeah.
Because like, Wakka's like, yeah, but who could have known? And Lulu's like, this is your fault. And Wakka's like, it's not my fault. And then he thinks for a minute and he goes, it is my fault.
Yeah. I touched on this barely a little bit last time. Like, we just got done talking about how Lulu was fed up with everybody holding on to the past and their connections to people who are dead now and all this stuff. Yeah. And we talked a little bit about Lulu being annoyed by Tidus during the sending and things like that. Here, it seems as if, I don't know, there's something about the way this actress delivers, and you're listening in Japanese, but in English,
for Lulu,
it's hard to get a read on any emotion in it.
Well, that's more or less true in Japanese as well.
Yeah.
Unless she's irritated.
It feels like she's okay with him now.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it's just more to do with the actress not showing a lot of emotion. Gotcha. Because I don't know why she would be. I don't think that Tidus has done anything at this point to like earn her trust or something. But
I wonder if she is like, it's out of her hands, right? Like whatever's happening is happening, and she's not okay with it, but like whatever.
It feels like there might have been some kind of conversation in between here, scenes, between like Lulu and Yuna, where she's, again, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but where she's sort of been like swayed somehow to be like, she's given into the idea of it. I don't know. It would have been nice to have that scene play on camera. Tidus overhears them talking or something, where Yuna tries to explain why she wants him to be a guardian, and Lulu, seeing that coming from Yuna would have been like, okay, fine, like for your sake, I'll put up with this or whatever. But it's just kind of weird because like there's this transition between how Lulu is acting here and here that like for me it's like, whoa, where did this change of temperament come from? But in any case, she's basically saying that Wakka should go tell Tidus that Yuna wants him as a guardian, and he's like, well, why me? Like, why doesn't Yuna ask him, or like, why don't we just leave the decision up to him? And she's saying, well, because he hates his father so much. So, how do you expect Yuna to go up to him and be like, Braska, my father, your father served my father as a guardian. Would you also serve me? Like the whole idea of that would be something that he might reject. So you do it, and do it with tact, and like just like ask him if he wants to do it. He's like, fine, I guess I will after the tournament or something. So, anyways, they're kind of discussing him and his connection to Jack. I think Wakka says something like, "Oh, why does he hate his father so much?" or whatever. It sounds like a luxury to me. Like I didn't.
Yeah, he didn't.
I didn't even know my parents.
Yeah, right? And Lulu's parents died when she was young as well.
Yeah, like 5 years old.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little conversation. It shows Lulu and Wakka's connection to each other. What are their feelings about Tidus joining them as a guardian, not just leaving him in Luca when they get there, and just be like, okay, bye, go find a life now. So they're sort of considering, like seriously considering him actually joining them beyond Luca at this point. So then Tidus walks to the front of the ship. There's a Blitzball there, and there's a little flashback with his father.
Flashback is good.
And he's like he's a kid, and he's trying to kind of practice with the ball. And Jack says like, oh, you can't do it, kid. Yeah. But don't worry, you're not the only one. No one else can do it. I'm the best. And he does his little Jack shot. Right?
Yes.
And then you perform a little mini game to try to like pull it off, right?
Yes. Now about that dream though, there's something very super interesting about the dream that I wonder if a lot of people have actually picked up on, because I was reading in the comments some speculation on a certain character who actually shows up in this cutscene, and I didn't realize. So as Tidus is running to kick the ball, he falls down, and there's somebody watching him from the background, right? And that's supposed to be Jekt.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not Jekt. Jekt comes from in front of him, then as Jekt is showing Tidus the move, There is someone else in the background.
I gotta see this.
Do you know who it is?
I gotta see this.
It is.
Hold on. I want to see it.
Do you want me to tell you who it
I want
is?
to see it. FF10.
People,
check,
tell me if you can notice.
shot. There.
Pause. Who is that?
Oh, the boy's back there.
Yes.
I see that. The little boy with the purple hood.
I don't know. Okay. This is great. This is really good. This shows us something extremely important. Tidus has a memory of his younger self. Mm-hmm. This is a flashback to a thing that actually happened, right?
Yes.
In this flashback of the memory, the young ghost boy is there.
Yeah, and
right
he's the
there.
same age.
And look, when Jack starts showing him the shot, look at where Tidus is looking while Jack is like, this is how you do it, you did it wrong. Watch where this kid looks.
Okay, so he's like, oh, I didn't do it.
Oh, he didn't do it.
And then Jack
Here comes
up.
Jack. And what does Tidus do?
He turns away from him.
Yes. He's looking towards that kid. And then Jack shows him the shot. We're refusing to look. We're looking at the other person who's present, who's just off camera right there in that shot. We aren't watching Jack. We never watched him do this. Of course, we probably knew the shot because we were his kid.
Right.
But even till Jack finishes doing this whole thing, you look at us, you look at Tidus.
He's not watching him.
He didn't watch Jack. He didn't watch it. He was looking at somebody else the whole time.
Interesting.
The ghost kid is there.
I didn't notice that.
Now, my thinking up to this game, and from having played it previously, was that he saw the ghost kid as he was older, as he was 17. This scene here kind of shows that he's been seeing that kid possibly his whole life.
Yeah, his whole life.
That kid's just kind of been around the whole time.
Well, it brings back to memory the early scene where he's telling the kids, "Oh, I'll show you. I'll show you tonight, like how to play Blitzball or something." And the kid's like, "You can't tonight."
You can't tonight.
And he actually turns back to the kid.
Looks at him.
And then turns back, "Oh, maybe tomorrow," or whatever.
Right.
Right.
This is a person who's been following him around.
Interacts with this kid.
Yes. It's fascinating. But even right here, and this is partly why that kid's present may not be so weird. He's been seeing that kid for 10 years at least.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So really interesting stuff. Okay. Now we'll talk more about who that kid even is later.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the minigame now.
Yeah, so you perform the minigame where Jack is constantly like talking down to Tidus, and he's like, "You can't do it.
You can't. No one can.
I'm the best.
Don't feel so bad because no one else can do it either."
Yeah. And anyways, if you perform the minigame correctly, you will learn the Jack shot, which you can then use in the Blitzball tournament.
Yes, that's right.
If you fail the minigame, you won't learn it now, but it is something you can learn later.
Later, okay.
So, typically it's suggested that you save before you do this so that if you mess it up, you can get it. Because if you want to win the tournament in Luca, it's nice to have the Jack shot.
Yes, the Jack. Well, I love that it's called the Jack shot because Tidus doesn't want to call it that.
Yeah, I liked that. I put a note on this.
I actually have lots of notes on that.
Because Waka watches him, the Blitzball team watches him perform this move, and they come up and ask, "Oh, what's that move called?" And Tidus says, "It doesn't have a name. Anyone can do it if they try." It's like the total opposite
novel on this
of Jack's saying, "Oh, I'm the only one who can do it. It's my shot." It's called this. What did she end up calling it? The magnificent or sublimely magnificent Jack shot Mark III.
Which is not what it's called in Japanese, by the way.
Yeah.
In Japanese, it's called the Sir Jack Shot III.
Oh, okay.
So they inserted the sublimely magnificent in the English version to make it seem even more arrogant than it already did.
Right. So his rejection of it having any name or association with his father, but then to say anyone can do it if you try or if you practice, is again separating from him. Yes. I really liked that moment.
He says, "Everybody, I know you can believe in yourself."
Everybody, I know you can believe in yourself.
Yes, that's right.
That's what he said. So, this is what I've got here. It doesn't have a name. Anyone can do it if they try. Tidus is Tidus says after doing the shot. This is a general philosophy of Final Fantasy style games, and part of the reason why they used to try not to nail players down with a name. You can name your character whoever you want, right?
Sure.
And that's really cool. Final Fantasy X still lets you do that, even as they entered voice acting and all that. It's like, no, but the character that you are, you get to be that character. When you name something, I'm just going to read what I wrote here because this is fascinating. Anyone can be Tidus, right? Anyone can do what he can do. By naming something, you categorize it. By defining something materially, you solidify an abstract idea and it becomes rigid, right? Now that's actually thematically important for Final Fantasy X because that may be some of the culture around Spira that has, been solidified in a way that's unbreakable, immovable, right? So categorization creates boundaries, and boundaries are inherently limiting, right? I feel like there's a connection here with the general philosophy of Final Fantasy, though of course that all changed after Sakaguchi left, right?
Yeah, sure.
But I like that philosophical ideas like that reach deep into the game and aren't just surface level, right? So despite the other reasons why not giving Tidus a name may have helped the dev team, that's immaterial because it still plays into the theme. Even though it was convenient, not as important when you're analyzing the theme. If it works for the theme, it doesn't matter that it was a convenience kind of thing for the dev team, right? Because it works for the theme, right? So that's still good either way. So this is a general problem with the religion of Yevon in Final Fantasy X. What did and did not constitute religious behavior, which is an abstract idea, right, became coded and exclusionary, and the boundaries were set. This is what you can do. And that's what you do when you name something. Like your name is Mike, right? In my head, there's a little bucket in my head that's the Mike bucket. And things that are Mike go in the bucket, things that aren't Mike go somewhere else.
In the different bucket.
Or out. Or even if somebody tells you, oh yeah, Mike told me yesterday he killed somebody. And I'm like, well, I won't throw that in the bucket because I'm like, that doesn't jive with the other things in the bucket, right? It doesn't fit. That doesn't make sense. I don't believe you, right? And so the idea of a name, of a category, when you name something, you're necessarily setting boundaries around it. You're creating a thing whereby you can fill the things that you think ought to go in that thing, right? Yeah. And when Tidus refuses to name it, what he's doing is he's leaving it open. Yeah. Because when something's rigid, right? Like if you call a shot the Jecht shot, the first thing you think of is, oh, that's Jecht's shot. I'm not Jecht.
Yes. So
I don't know if I could do the shot.
Yes.
But if you just say, oh, this is a sick shot, who knows? Like if I hear a killer guitar solo on the radio, and I'm like, oh, dude, that sounds sweet. I'll bet you I could play that. And then they say, that was Eddie Van Halen. What do I think of my ability to play that?
Maybe I can't because I'm not as good as him.
Exactly. Or, oh, this was, gosh, I don't even know guitarists anymore, but this was Stevie Ray Vaughan. I'm like, oh, dang it, I thought I could play it, but I can't play Stevie. He's so good. I won't even try now, right? Yeah. And so it's beautiful. It's really cool what they're doing. So anyways, this works with the exclusivity of the Yevon religion. The god of the religion became solidified as an unchangeable force, which is, if you want to get into Old Testament stuff, that's the idea of crafting an idol after a god that is abstract, right? And then you make the abstract concrete in this thing, and this is God. It's like, well, you may have had that intention, but that's not God.
Yeah, right.
That's an idol. Yeah. God is very different from whatever you just pulled out from that, right? And so, anyways, that's part of the idea. The first commandment, don't make idols, right? Because God is this, abstract force. So within the Yevon religion, they have this rigid, almost like an idol, this rigid rule, these concrete, you have to do this, you can't do anything else, right? And that limits God, honestly. But that's the way that culture tends to go, right? Yeah. So the abstract becomes concrete, it becomes an idol, stifling and restraining. It turns out the shot did have a name, the sublimely magnificent Jecht shot, the Mark III. In Japanese, it was just called the Sir Jecht shot, right? Yeah. So Jecht took something that was accessible to anyone and everyone. They practiced long enough, right? Yeah. And he named it. He named it something that others felt was unattainable. He called it after his own name and made it seem as though it was something only he could do. He even numbered it to give the impression that there was more to it. But that was merely an illusion. Right? But this works with the general Yevon thing to begin with, right? Where it's like, oh, you'd have to learn Mach 1 before you learned Mach 3, right? You don't even try Mach 3 until you've done Mach 1. But there is no Mach 1.
No one has seen it.
No one's seen it.
So how could they even practice one or two?
So it's a mental thing. It's just, I need to do Mach 1 before I can do Mach 3. But it's like, no, Mach 3 is Mach 1. If you just understood that this shot isn't only Jecht and it's not Mach 3, then you might actually think you could do it. Okay, I have more here though, because I think this is really important, because this connects directly with Yevon, right? So the illusion of Mach 3 is something to keep his fans returning week after week, right? Because there's the illusion that you might see another miracle, right? You might see Mach 1, Mach 2, Mach 3, Mach 4. Who knows?
Right.
There more may follow. So people week after week
go back.
Will keep returning. Maybe
I see where you're going.
Every Sunday morning, or however you want to do it, whatever it is, right? So the spirit religion connection is super present there. So Tidus is trying to tear down the cult of Jecht, right? He's actually really pissed. We see this with Yuna. People really liked his dad. Yeah. And at every moment, he's just like, no, that's not how my dad was. My dad was bad. Stop saying he was good, he was bad. So Tidus is trying to tear down the cult of Jecht. That's more or less what I put it, right? So Tidus is trying to tear down the cult of Jecht, who people thought he was, the people who loved him so much, his fans who followed him, clinging to his every word, hoping they would be able to see another miracle. Tidus is trying to confront the cult followers that Jecht had. At the same time, he's also slowly dismantling certain concepts within the religious domain of Spira.
Right.
So he can see through everyone's cult worship of Jecht and says, no, you guys are wrong. He also has this similar ability to kind of see through some of the cultural practices of Yevon and say, hey guys, this doesn't make sense. This probably isn't right?
Yeah.
But these two things are coincidental. They're similar because the difference between, this is where the difference between him and Yuna shows, right? Yuna had a good father whom she loved dearly. There are statues of her father, and the people of the world loved him as well. She doesn't seek to undo her father's following, and she also holds a deep reverence for the church, whose principles she embodies and upholds. There's a connection here of opposites. Once again, the yin and yang comes to mind. They're different modes of thinking. Yeah. So Tidus also says this line, which I love how they put this in the English, and I wasn't paying enough attention for the Japanese, but in English he says, there wasn't too much to honor about my father, right? The word honor, right? If you're going to talk about honoring a father, you're making reference to honor thy father and thy mother. You're making reference to the Bible, right? And what he's saying is that there was nothing to honor about my father. Yeah. So here's Yuna, who holds reverence to her father and to the church. Right. And then there's Tidus, who does not hold reverence to his father, and almost in the same vein does not hold reverence for the church either. Yeah. It's like they're intrinsically connected, right? So Yuna then chastises him as though he's done something immoral by saying that his father was not worthy.
You can't say that about honor. Your father. You shouldn't say that about your father, right?
Yeah, and she is basically like, anyways, it all goes in line with the religious idea of honoring your father and your mother isn't just cultural, it's in the Bible. So in Japanese, the conversation goes a little bit different, but in the end, she says that she feels sorry for Jecht. Tidus then says, what about me? And then Yuna says, I feel even more sorry for you. So when he says that there's nothing to honor about his father, I did pay attention to her response because it was shorter. So because sometimes the Japanese gets translated backwards in syntax, and anyways, I just wasn't paying attention. But but I do recognize when they don't make sense, though. I do recognize when it's like, that's not what he said at all, right? But this one was, as soon as he says there's nothing odd about my father, what Yuna says in the Japanese is, oh, I feel so sorry for Jecht, that he doesn't have a son who honors him.
That's an interesting difference. Yes. Because in English, he says, I got the right. And she says, oh, I guess you do.
No, that's not what she says.
It's really different.
That's not what she says.
Really different.
So she says, I feel sorry for him, and then he says, what about me? And then she says, I feel sorry for you too.
Completely different.
No, very much so. In the English, they're trying to build a little connection between Yuna and Tidus, in that she's maybe coming towards him a little bit. And I can respect that. I can understand that, right? She's like, no, I loved my father, but okay, maybe there's two sides here. Maybe you have a point, right? In the Japanese, Japan is very, very, the Confucian system of values is very much ingrained within Japan, Korea, China. It's a like honoring your parents and honoring elders, basically anyone older than you, you have to be like very deferential and respectful to. Right. People who, even if they're 1 year older than you, they're your elder, you better respect them, right? And so the fact that Tidus is like, I don't respect my old man, in Japan, that hurts more than
it's like more
in
shocking.
America. Yeah, it's worse. It's a lot worse. So in America, we got a Bible that says to honor your parents, but it's like, I don't know that people care that much, especially younger people. But in Japan, it is very much ingrained from a young age. You don't speak bad about your father. You don't speak bad about anyone older than you. You'll be very respectful to everybody who's older than you, and you're a jerk to everyone younger than you, and that's fine. That's the order of things.
Yeah.
That's the Confucian way, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think this conversation goes a little bit different. Yuna, it would make Japanese people respect Yuna just a little less if she was like, oh, okay, you have a good point that you don't honor your father.
Yeah.
That's not how Japan works,
Yeah.
right? So I think that would explain the difference here. I actually appreciate the English translation a little bit, at least a little bit, because it does offer a little bit of some malleability to Yuna's character that may continue throughout the story.
That's a really interesting connection because this is one thing to pay attention to as you're playing the game, is Tidus as our point of view character. And we were talking about this a little bit on the car back to the train station last week or something, but
The fool.
his ability to, because he was not raised in the culture, right?
Yes,
to see through a lot of the cultural practices and the traditions for what they really are,
Right,
rather
yeah.
than what they represent or what they're taught to be.
Yeah.
And he sort of cuts through this
Exactly,
in a way that
yes.
nobody in the culture really can.
They can't, yeah.
Maybe the Bhed, but like.
Well, yeah, you're right. You're probably right about that. But they're so
but the
ostracized.
Bhed are
that they
ostracized to a
can't,
degree
yeah.
that where the people won't listen to them.
People won't listen, exactly.
But
exactly.
Tidus has an in.
Yes.
And so like he's going to be able to do this for the party in a way that's really important thematically to the story. And we'll talk a lot more about this in later episodes. It's one of my favorite aspects of this game's story generally, is this different perspective from an outsider of the culture who is able to, because I think preserving culture is important. I'm not saying that.
Me too.
But
me
there
too.
are definitely parts of every culture that I think are worthy of criticism, that need to be changed, but they have a hard time being changed from inside of the culture.
Right.
Because the people being raised in it see it as fine or normal or whatever, or good, when it's actually harmful or something. Right?
This is a similar concept to what we talked about in our Nier discussion, where that's just how it goes, and some people may not love that, and that's fine. There's a reason why it's this way,
Yeah.
Like the idea of a foreigner, usually a fool, like Tidus, coming in and doing something important that even the wisest sages couldn't have done. Is because of this thing. It's because of this reason.
Yeah.
And that's not to say you always have to have someone from the outside coming in,
Yeah.
or that maybe that can be harmful, because that's absolutely true. In fact, in the case with Nier, it's like, well, yeah, sometimes, right? But, there are multiple ways that a culture can change, and this is one of them.
Yeah, I should probably amend a little bit what I said there. I think I said something about a way that a culture can't address it. I shouldn't say can't, but it takes longer.
Exactly. There you go.
That
it takes longer.
It's more difficult, or anyways, it's harder to see it, or it takes a person from within the culture longer to see it. And I guess I see parallels.
I think you're right.
Anyways, I'm just trying to amend the idea that a culture can't be changed from within. Of course it can.
Right.
It's just easier for a person coming from outside of it, not indoctrinated by it, to be able to clearly, objectively see it for what it is, right?
Yes.
And so this is an aspect of this game that I really, really like. And I like the connection with his way of tearing down the concept of Jekt as well. He's doing, that's basically Tidus's role in the story, is to take away people's preconceived notions and show them what it really is.
Multiple ways,
That's basically his whole role in the story, to help people see things for how it really is rather than how they've perceived it to be.
Right, how they were told to think of it,
Right. So I like that. That's great.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, so it's a conversation between Yuna and, he does bring up the idea about, you should understand because your father was famous too, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And that's where she says, well, I honored him, right? And you should honor your father. There wasn't much to honor about my old man. That whole thing. Anyways, it's a good conversation.
It was, it really was.
The transition narration here, going into Luca, Tidus says, I don't think my old man would have come to Luca. He never did like watching other people play.
Yes.
But I couldn't help feeling something bad was going to happen, and these feelings of mine are usually right. Sure, I had told Waka I'd help win the tournament, but I wasn't sure I had it in me to play at all anymore. So he's concerned with a lot of more important things than playing Blitzball at this moment.
Yes, absolutely.
I liked when they're arriving at the docks, they have like an announcer who's like announcing every
it
the
was
teams
so
arriving.
funny, dude. Oh my gosh.
And
the most biased possible announcer you'll ever hear.
Yeah, because it's Luca. Luca is the city, right? So they're going to be,
But everyone has to play in Luca, and you just have to put up with this cruddy announcer every time.
They're going to be partial to their hometown team.
Yes.
But I loved what they said about the Besaid Aurochs. Well, if it isn't the Besaid Aurochs, they're a living, breathing statistical impossibility. I've never seen a team this bad.
So bad. In all 23 years, they've never won a single game.
Never made it out of the first round, ever, in 23 years. It's freaking like crazy. It's impossible for them
you'd
to
think
be
that
this
even
bad.
accidentally they'd win one game.
Is really funny.
Yeah, it's so
and as we'll
funny.
find later, even accidentally be seeded higher so that you could have a bye past the first round. Even that has never happened until this time,
Which
right?
did happen, yeah.
So anyways, Tidus is fed up with the way that they're being treated, so he gets up with a little megaphone like, hey, Luca goers, like, we're going to beat you this time, like, doing his thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, man, what are you doing? This is where Maester Micah arrives on his ship. He's like the leader of Spira, the religious leader of Yevon and of Spira generally.
Yes, one of the four masters, they call him.
Which indicates this is a theocracy. This culture is a theocracy. The church runs the state.
Right.
So the religious leader is the political leader as well.
Yeah, one and the same.
So a bunch of people are running over to like see Maester Micah as he arrives. Tidus knows nothing about who this is, right?
Yeah.
So Lulu's explaining he's our leader, blah, 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 blah.
Don't you know Lulu just hates explaining this? Like, who's the president? This is the president. It's like you're talking to a kindergarten.
Yeah, and it's been 50 years that Maester Micah has been leading.
Yes, a very long time.
Tidus says, shouldn't he be retired by now?
Yes. But
Waka gets pissed.
Yes, because this goes to what you were saying before about how change has a hard time coming from within.
Yeah.
Well, Tidus says, he blasphemes. He says, well, wouldn't it be better if, isn't 50 years too long for one person to be in charge?
Right.
And it's like, no one's allowed to say that.
Yeah.
No one's allowed to think that.
Yeah.
Nobody would even come to a point where they would naturally think that, right? That almost has to be pointed at by an outsider, where it's like, hey, isn't this just like a really old dude? Like, are you sure? And then it's like, crap, the court jester just made fun of the king, and now I have to pretend that I'm, that I don't see the truth now. Like somebody just pointed out that the emperor has no clothes, to use that analogy.
Yes.
And it's like, but you have to pretend that you don't see the naked emperor. You have to pretend, because it's like, shut up, don't say it. Everything's fine until you say it. Just don't say it. But that's Tidus, that's the fool, that's the archetype.
Yeah.
He points it out.
Yeah.
And now everyone else, the obvious is hidden until somebody points it out, and then it becomes obvious, But it's not obvious to everyone initially.
Right.
I love it. It's so good.
Waka's like, hey, mind your mouth now. Like, don't say that. And he's going to be, again, he's the most devout
Waka
of any of the party.
He seems to be,
He's the one who's going to always take umbrage with like anything that
any criticism
conflicts or is a criticism of Yevon or whatever.
Even a gentle suggestion that 50 years is a little too long to be leading. It's like nope, won't have it.
Refuse to look at that, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways,
and it's not like he doesn't have reasons, right?
Yeah.
Especially looking at how his brother became a crusader, which is by necessity
that would have reinforced his
a little bit of an
faith.
Excommunication thing is like necessary to become a crusader.
Yes.
And then he's like, he shouldn't have done that. That was his. If only he remained faithful, he wouldn't have died.
Also,
which is technically probably true.
He didn't pray before leaving.
And he didn't pray. Yeah.
So all this reinforced Waka's faith in
his
Yevon.
Pattern recognition. That it was like, this is the correct pattern, even though it could easily be coincidence, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they run over to the dock, and this is where we first meet Seymour Guado, who is the son of Jiskel Guado, who was like the Guado leader. Guado's a race.
Yes.
In this game.
That's important to know, but they won't really go into it until later.
I don't think we've actually seen a Guado yet. Like,
he's half, isn't
Seymour's
Seymour half? Yeah, he's half Guado.
So he has some elements of physiology of Guado.
Yeah.
But also there's human physiology there, right? Half and half.
Yeah.
So anyways...
Whoa, if you will remember, though, Guado is one of the words that was written in the temple at the very beginning when we first got to Spira. One of those words is Guado.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to all that later.
So Maester Micah sort of like introduces him, right, as being like the new Maester. He was just ordained or something like that.
Because somebody died.
Because his father, Jiskel, had just departed to the far plane a fortnight past. As some of you already know, he has been officially ordained a Maester of Yevon. And so then Seymour says, in life, my father, Jiskel, worked to foster friendship between man and Guado. I vow to carry on his legacy. So there's, I would guess, some friction between those two races in the past.
Yes.
Jiskel was trying to repair that and foster a friendship between them. It would make sense then that he had a human wife.
Yes, oh sure.
And a half-human son.
That's true.
As being a person who's trying to mend those relationships.
Almost like a medieval marriage contract thing where it's like the royal king of France marries the princess of England or whatever. And it's like, okay, that
to
unites the peoples. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it ever actually worked, but
yeah. Rarely, but
maybe it did once or twice.
Usually that just means now my daughter's a hostage in wartime.
If so, I can't attack.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, so at the end of his little speech there, Seymour shares a glance with Yuna.
Yes, and his lips move.
Mm-hmm. And Tidus sort of notices that Yuna's, I don't know, maybe a little embarrassed
flustered
or by that glance.
Yeah. She recognized it.
Took notice of that.
Yes. Right. And I was thinking I might want to read his lips, but in a game like this where the animation, it's like, I don't think that's possible.
Yeah. Okay. So then the next scene is in the Besaid Auric's locker room. They're waiting to find out who's going to be their first matchup.
Yeah.
And they've always been matched up with Luca goers in the first round.
And Luca goers always have the advantage.
And so, yes. So he comes in with the good news. He says we got seeded, but I think what he means is we got seeded higher, which means we have a bye.
Yes.
So we don't have to play the first round. Yes. There's only 2 matches, the semifinals and then the finals.
Yeah.
So all we got to do is win twice and we can win the tournament. So they get a bye. They get seeded higher. So they got lucky. They got out of the first round automatically. So it's good news. All right, cool.
And they're playing the Bhed. The
Bhed Sykes.
The Sykes.
Yeah, it is their first matchup. And so Yuna arrives as he's sort of giving their final meeting before this match, informs Tidus that Auron has been seen in a cafe.
Now, how did Yuna know that we knew Auron? I actually can't remember how that scene goes. It seemed natural, but I'm thinking about it now. Maybe they were just talking to each other about Auron. Somebody said, oh, Auron's here. Everyone seems to know Auron. And then we overheard it.
It's actually an interesting question. I didn't think about it until just now. Because he does say after this, I didn't even question whether this is the same Auron that I know. I just knew it was the same guy.
It would have to be the same one.
But I don't know if they have, at least on screen up to this point, ever talked about Auron together.
I don't think so.
But if Jecht is his father, which they all assume is true, and Auron and Jecht were friends and fellow guardians of Braska, then, but I don't know, the assumption, I guess she's just making the assumption that somehow he would know that.
My guess is she said it to the whole room and we just perked up.
Maybe that's true.
But it's basically just us two talking. I'm like, are you kidding me, Auron? I know that guy. And so she's saying, yeah, I'm gonna go see him. And I remember the first time I played this game, I had a kind of a hard time with this because the game's about to start, right? And it's like, we leave. Now, anyone who's
Blitzball game,
familiar with any story, we're not making it for that game. And even though Tidus is like, oh, I'll make it back for the game, it's like, no, that's not going to happen. But I had a different reaction playing it this time because Tidus being in a foreign land, this is the first possibility of someone he might have known previously being anywhere near him.
In Spira,
That's like, I approach it, I get a new appreciation, I think, for Tidus' reaction here and how he just leaves Waka. Because Waka's freaking out. Waka's like, dude, we can't win without you. And Tidus is like, Waka, chill, breathe, calm down, take deep breaths.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
I'll be right back. And Waka's right.
Yeah.
Like, Waka knew that he wasn't going to make it back.
Nope.
And his worst fears came true.
Yeah.
But this was the first chance that Tidus could meet someone he actually used to know and know pretty well. And I would maybe actually do the same thing. I'd be like, dude, I know I told you I played this game, but I need this guy. He might be the only person in the universe that I know. And I can't not go meet him. I have to, because what if he leaves, you know?
Yeah. And he was also involved in him coming here in the first place.
Exactly, yeah.
What did he do to me? It's his fault that I'm here in the first place.
And so there might be some anger there too, where it's like, I have to go see this guy.
Right.
I can see that. So I didn't get it before just because it was annoying that we're going to miss the game. But I get it now. It makes more sense to me.
You run into some Bhed in the hallway from there.
Oh, yeah.
Again, if you think it's a spoiler to know what the Bhed say and you don't want to learn this till you've collected the primers yourself and play the game on New Game Plus or something, skip ahead like 30 seconds or something like that. But it's not like a huge spoiler for the story. Anyways, what the Bhed say, I'm waiting for you to click away if you want to do that. 3, 2, 1. Is a lady summoner we must report. So they notice Yuna walking past, and this is where they come up with their little plot.
So they didn't know before
kidnap Yuna.
I assumed they already were aware.
Yeah, to blackmail or whatever. The Besaid Aurochs, so that they'll throw the game.
Yeah.
So they're trying to cheat by taking away their summoner and holding her hostage and being like, you have to throw the game or else, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
I don't know why the Besaid Aurochs are concerned about the statistical impossibility. Besaid Aurochs who are terrible. As if they, I think even
You're right.
Tidus even comments on this, as if they needed to throw the game. Like, why are they concerned about the Aurochs? They're terrible. They're a terrible team.
It's like they were desperate.
But the game,
and that's where he says, oh, they must be pretty bad this year too, if they're going to these lengths.
Right. So anyways, that's just what they say. They're just saying they're taking notice of Yuna and they're beginning their plot, right, to like kidnap her. So, okay, Tidus and Yuna are kind of walking through the city. He tries to teach her how to whistle.
Oh, yeah.
By like putting his fingers in his mouth. This is how we like cheer for people in Blitzball. Like, and she tries it and she struggles. Yeah, he's like, well, keep practicing, you'll figure it out. So nice little interactions with them throughout the city. Tidus is remarking on how large Luca is. This is the largest city he's seen so far. And she says it's the second largest city in all of Spira. And he was like, I thought like all of your towns were small, like Besaid and Kilika.
Right, in case, Sin comes and
or the fact that he comes and destroys it so often that they constantly have to just rebuild. So anyways, she says towns don't usually get bigger than that because when a lot of people gather or when they start to gather, then Sin comes,
shows up.
kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
And so he says, what about Luca? It's safe here? And she says, it's not any different, but the stadium is here, and the Crusaders fight to protect it with all their strength. And he's like, they fight to protect the stadium? And she's like, Blitzball is the only entertainment we have. Spira is a little short on fun these days. So Luca is able to survive at the size that it is and with the number of people there because the Crusaders focus most of their efforts on protecting Luca because that's where they play Blitzball. Blitzball is that important to this culture. They have to protect Blitzball at all costs. So they don't spread themselves out to protect all of the towns and cities. They mostly focus on Luca to protect it and to protect the sanctity of Blitzball.
I love it.
From Sin. So that's why this city is larger than most others, right?
I love it too. Then she asks, was Xanarkand this big?
Yeah.
Because Tidus was remarking how big Luca is, and he's like, he looks around. No, Xanarkand's a lot bigger. The buildings are closer together. They're
Way
taller. There's more of them. Yeah, and she's like, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So then they arrive at the cafe. Auron is not there.
No, but some Ronzo people are.
Kimahri gets into a scuffle with some Ronzo that he knew back when his time in the tribe, I guess.
Well, now we see this is the one weakness of Kimahri, because we've talked earlier in the series about how Kimahri is always there for Yuna. He never misses out. When Yuna's in trouble, he's right there.
Yep.
but not this time.
Not this time.
And this is his one weakness, is being mocked, being ridiculed.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of pride. The Ronzo have a lot of pride.
Yeah.
And he happens to have a chopped off horn for a certain reason, we don't know yet. But he is being belittled by these people. And he's a little shorter.
He's much smaller than them. Yeah.
Than the other
he's
guys.
like a runt Ronzo.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're making fun of his size.
He's got some pride to protect here, and ends up getting into a fist fight, into a bar fight.
Tidus is the one who like prods him to do it. He's like,
know.
take him on. He's like, fight him.
Because we know how strong Ronzo is and how good he is.
Yeah,
so Ronzo
Kimari,
just knocks one down. Or sorry, Kimari.
Yeah.
And then the other dude knocks him down. And then we turn around and is like, where's Yuna? And I'm like, she's gone.
She's been kidnapped.
And Kimari, this was his one weakness, was somebody who was, culturally making a mockery of him because of some weaker aspects of himself that don't fit into his culture, the way he was raised.
Yeah.
And he desperately wants that. He wants the approval of the Ronzo, and he can't. He can't have it. He's basically been excommunicated.
Yeah.
His horn's been cut off. So it's like, he's no longer a Ronzo. It's kind of like if you touch a baby bird, the mother won't take it back, kind of thing. It's like he's dirty. He's gone. He can't do it. But Yuna, I would hope that he felt pretty bad, but we never really hear from him much. It's mostly Tidus that gets the blame.
Yep.
This is what I find amazing, though. So we notice Yuna's missing. We turn around. We leave. And Lulu's already there.
Yes. The timing of this makes no sense.
Not only is she already there,
at all.
She's got the ransom note. The kidnap's already happened. The kidnapping's already happened.
They've already made a plan about how they're going to deal with it.
Dude,
with Waka. They already know what the signal's going to be. This happened in like the blink of a fetching eye.
So freaking fast. So this makes me wonder, how long was Kimari
fighting those guys?
Like, it could be there was some abstraction of the idea of the fight that was condensed for entertainment's sake, but it was really like an hour long where they were just going at it,
It's almost like if this were to play out in a movie, there'd be like a 10 or 15 minute fight scene.
Probably.
With
some
Tidus
more time.
and Kimari like taking on
Yeah,
these Ronzo
Tidus
together.
going himself
They're, like,
and
fighting
like throwing fists.
And like have a big bar fight or something. And in the commotion,
Yeah.
you would see a shot would cut away to see Yuna being like taken by the Bhed, and the fight would continue, and you'd make it a whole action scene or something.
Yeah.
And then they're like
Stretch
distracted by the TV being like, oh, the game is beginning.
game's
It's like,
starting.
Oh crap, I lost my cool and I didn't think of the time.
Yep.
And now I'm late to the game. And then it's like, oh fetch, where's Yuna? Like
Yep.
everything's going crazy.
Everything goes.
Kimari, forget this. We gotta get out of here. And that would conceivably be enough time for Lulu to have rushed over and been like, what are you doing? You lost her, like the Bhed Sykes are like holding her ransom. We gotta go save her now.
Yeah.
I guess you could assume that that's the way this went or whatever, but. So the three of them are gonna go together to save her. As they're going, they see another broadcast where they're seeing Waka get beat up in the game.
Oh yeah, the Bhed, the Sykes play dirty.
They're like beating him. It's like, oh, the ref didn't call the foul. Like Waka's taking a beating. Again, Lulu's, she's like, he won't last. He's always like that. She's just like being such a
not like Chapu.
I know.
So
she's
perfect.
so mean about it, dude.
She is. Yeah. Mostly in public.
I know.
Because there is a moment later on where Waka kind of passes out and falls into her arms, and she's when she's alone, she's very good to him.
Yes.
It seems.
Yes.
But if anyone's around, she's got an image to uphold, and she's just the cold-hearted,
Yeah. And it's like, what you say about someone when they're not present is like more reflective of what you really think. Right?
You're right.
So
you're
it's
right,
like, I don't know, man. I didn't like her.
Yeah,
early on in this game, I was like disliking her more and more. Now I'm talking about like my first playthrough, second playthrough. Yeah. Now I think she's a great character, but it's just this I don't know. She really rubs.
She's got a cold side to her. She's got a very cold side to her. Yep.
Anyways, there's a whole sequence where you're running through fighting a bunch of fiends and stuff and trying to get there before the ship's like taking off and they're like run and jump on it just in time.
Yeah. Got to fight this huge spider monster.
It's a big machina actually. So this is
yes, you're right.
This is another reinforcement that the Bhed are not Yevon's supporters. This using machina is like against the religion of Yevon.
Yes.
So they're using machines.
They're the blasphemers. Yeah.
Yes.
They're sinning. They're using the machines.
So that's why you're fighting a machine here, because it's an Bhed ship. And you beat it. You save Yuna. Yuna is actually taking care of herself pretty well because it reveals that
she just walks out.
She
on
beats
her
some
own.
dudes up.
Well,
And
Lulu's like, I hope you hurt them.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, a little.
So Tidus is talking about like, oh man, I hoped that this was the same ship, you know, and then that's when he reveals, oh, some Bhed saved me.
Yeah.
Sin attacked us, and I lost them. I don't know what happened. I was hoping this might be the same ship. And this is where it's revealed that Yuna
I didn't realize how early this happened.
Half Bhed.
Yep.
Her mother was Bhed.
Yep.
Which is, there's a lot to think about with this. And maybe they'll talk about it. How Braska, a high summoner, part of Yevon, was wed to an Bhed.
To, what's the word? An infidel,
yeah,
basically.
Basically, yes. Right. A lot to think about there. We'll maybe touch on that later, but...
Yeah, it's interesting.
Her uncle is Sid.
Yeah, and so she asks Tidus, hey, did you meet anyone there named Sid? And we're like, I didn't. Tidus had no idea what anyone was saying. He had no idea. So he's like, they were all talking their funny language. I didn't know what they were saying.
Right.
And so Yuna says, oh, well, he's my uncle.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't seen him in a long time.
Yeah.
And
he grew distant after my mother got married to Braska. But she told me if I'm ever in trouble, go find Sid.
Go find Sid.
Yeah.
And this is where one of the reasons I mentioned before, how Yuna has two different eye colors, is this is part of it, right?
Yes.
But it's not, well, we'll get into more reasons. It's not just this.
Yes.
Because the artistic importance of two different eye colors is more than just, oh, she's a
half in this world, half in this world.
Yes.
Yeah.
But for other reasons too. But at least now we know physically, her parents are from separate lineages that have, they're like foreigners.
Yeah.
And so that resulted in her having two different eye colors, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool.
So anyways, Lulu is very strongly like, do not tell Waka about her lineage. He never had a lot of love for the Bhed or something like that. And Tidus is just sitting there going, whoa, I gotta tell Waka.
That was so funny, dude.
Hilarious.
That was the timing, everything was just perfect. Because we knew immediately, like, oh, we know what he's thinking. He's not going to tell. But Lulu's like, I just said.
Don't tell Waka.
And we're like, no. And then Yuna's like, oh, the game. I'm like, oh, crap.
Oh, and then Lulu throws up like a magic flare into the air. And Waka sees this from inside the game.
Sign,
It's like, that's the sign that she's okay. You're free to win the game now.
Yes. Oh, there's another weird thing that Lulu says. When Yuna gets first kidnapped and we leave the bar and she's there, they say, oh, they want us to throw the match or else, who knows, maybe they'll kill her. Well, Lulu says a line that makes no sense. She says, we're not taking any chances.
Oh.
We're going to not throw the match.
Yes.
And we're going to go there. And we're going to kill them.
That's true, actually.
And then we're going to take her.
Huge chance.
That's taking chances.
Well, she does say they're blitzball players, so they're probably not going to do anything rash. But then on the back of that, we're not taking any chances.
We're not taking chances. But that doesn't make sense. With not taking chances would be throwing the game. There's more important
to make
things.
sure that she is okay.
That
it's
would
a
be not
huge
taking
chance
chances.
to go fight the Bhed to get her.
Exactly.
True.
So, anyways, I thought that was maybe a little inconsistency there. I don't know.
Right. Okay, so
the Japanese might be different.
There's like 10 seconds left in the game. Waka takes the ball. They do like a
full assault.
A full assault. They're just all rushing the goal.
Which I guess means maybe they pulled their goalie as an offensive
Maybe that
player.
would be an equivalent to what they do in hockey.
Yeah.
To something like that.
Some kind of equivalent. Offense.
Like, all in.
We're
going to score right now.
Yeah.
And they score with like 2 seconds left. They win the game. It's like, oh my gosh, the RX actually won.
Now here's the crazy thing. That was just Waka. Tidus wasn't playing.
No.
Waka won his first game ever.
Yep.
Without Tidus.
Didn't need Tidus.
Now, what I love about that, now I'm going to mention somebody here in the comment section, which was great. So Jacob Schrum left a comment on episode 3, and it was some sentiments were also echoed by somebody named Chris Pohl, who said something similar. So Jacob Schrum wrote, Waka obviously really wants to win at Blitzball, and he shows later on that he has the skill to do so, but it's like he put the cap on himself.
Because he was just, as long as we do our best.
Right?
Then I'm happy with it.
But this is where the connection between that and the greater world of Spirit becomes really relevant, and I thought this was a great comment. Waka's entire worldview revolves around Yevon and the inevitability of Sin's return. You can't kill sin.
Yeah.
You can just do your best.
Yes.
You can't win.
Yes.
You never win, right? So this says, which is why he feels like he can never win at Blitzball, or why he subconsciously prevents himself from winning at Blitzball. Winning in any real way is not in his personal lexicon. Tidus forcibly breaks him out of this by coming in with a worldview that is unaffected by sin or Yevon or any of that, which is a microcosm of what he proceeds to do over the course of Final Fantasy X. So that comment from Jacob Schrum was really good, because that is exactly it. It's not that Tidus came in and played for Waka and won the game for Waka. It's that he showed Waka a different mindset that allowed Waka to win himself.
Yes.
Right?
To break the cycle.
That's so cool.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Right.
And that's what he's trying to do, you know, in other aspects. And he doesn't even know he's doing it. He's just showing up. He's the fool from a different land who just showed up here and is poking holes in the system, right? He doesn't know what he's doing. What he's actually doing, and he's helping so many people in so many different ways. But it's not even that intentional. He's just kind of showing people that there might be a different way. And that alone gets people to think outside the box and gives people hope in a different way, you know? Really cool.
So one thing I want to say in response to this, because I love this interpretation. I think it's awesome. But just one thing to keep in mind as well, because this might be something we'll touch on later in regards to the world building of Final Fantasy X and the length of calms and things of that nature, right? I just think it's important to include in this, they do believe that it is possible to defeat sin ultimately.
You're right.
At some point. Like
you are
maybe
right.
This time will be the time where he's defeated forever.
Each time is supposed to be the last time.
And it's not.
And it never is.
It's very possible that despite having some hope of that, it's not actually going to be me.
Right.
But it could be. So they have faith.
That's a good caveat.
That there is a possibility this could be the time we really kill him.
Yeah.
But I think growing up in the culture, knowing how many
for the
times
past
it's repeated,
1,000 years.
it's probably not gonna be me.
Yeah.
So I think it still works. But I just wanted to put that out
That's
there.
good. That's
they do believe that they can defeat sin for real. There's not this sense that, we'll just continually banish it for a short time and have it come back, and we'll just keep doing that forever. They do ultimately believe there's going to be a time when they will have atoned from Xanarkin's 1,000-year, the culture that started all this, and we will finally be free of this thing forever. So
good.
Okay. Lulu's response to seeing them win is not the most graceful win. If it was Chapu, he'd still be standing.
Oh, Lulu.
That's
See,
huge.
if it wasn't for the moment that happens, maybe 10 minutes after this, I'm really not feeling so good about Lulu here.
Yes.
But that moment actually saves her character.
Yes,
for me,
coming up in a minute. Yes, I agree. So Tidus confronts her about this. Like, hey, aren't you just being a little unfair? And she says, excuse me? He says, look, I know I could never take Chapu's place. You're the one who told Waka that, right? And I don't think Waka could ever take Chapu's place. He's about to say that.
I know, and she's like,
you don't want to finish that sentence.
You say another word. That reminds me, what was it Casino Royale or one of the James Bond movies where James Bond breaks into M's office and he's like, I thought M was a randomly assigned letter. I had no idea it stood for, and then Judi Dench, I think, she's like, one more word and I'll have you killed. She's like, don't you say that out loud.
Yep.
Anyways, this is great.
Yep. Anyways, they get back. Waka's pretty injured.
Yeah, he's super jacked. He's not going to be able to play.
So basically, Tidus is going to take his place.
Yeah.
Waka's going to be benched for the finals because he's injured. And they kind of set this all up, right? Okay. This harkens back to something I've been kind of building up to here. He's kind of upset at Yuna. He says, how could you let some Bhed kidnap you? Right? Like, how could you do that? Right? What are you doing associating with Bhed at all? Not knowing the circumstances, obviously.
Right.
And Tidus says, hey, man, let it go, all right? And Waka responds, don't go near Bhed anymore, okay?
Yeah, stay away from them.
So this is where we've learned, now from Lulu and from the horse's mouth, he has some prejudice against Bhed.
Yes.
And it's really intense.
Though he can't recognize an Bhed
and
standing right in front of him.
I really liked that they didn't tell this about Waka earlier in the game.
Yeah, me too.
They endeared us to Waka first. They made him likable. They made him Tidus's best friend in Spira. They had them be bros.
He's just the nicest guy.
And we get to see him get his first victory in Blitzball. And all of this so that when you learn that someone you care about harbors these kinds of feelings, it's like, oh no. Now you're conflicted about it. You're not able to just dismiss this character. Oh, what a bad person. And I like that because there's nuance to that. There's a sense that humans, we're messed up. We have different cultures in which we grow up and different beliefs that are harbored. And sometimes we're misled because of those things. But that doesn't make the person a completely terrible human being, right? And I like that they are able to have us go, okay, we need to help Waka, instead of, oh, dismiss Waka, screw that guy, he's horrible, right? I think that that's really important because you see the humanity in the character and you want that character to change. You want to see that change happen. And the fact that they introduced that so much later in the game makes that possible, makes the nuance of this conversation about his prejudice possible. But I just like in this case that we got to see the good sides of Waka first. And that's going to make us like eager to like see him change.
Well, and to know that he's maybe capable
of it.
Yeah, that it's like, no, this is a good person. This isn't just a prejudiced person. This is somebody who can do what it takes to change if we help him along.
Right.
You know? And that so it gives us like a thing to do, you know.
Yeah. And then the scene plays out where
it's so good.
Lulu and Waka. Yeah.
Waka's benched, we get up, we go to play, Waka's laying down, but then he gets up. And I can't remember exactly what he says to her. Lulu says, hey, I saw you pass out in the middle of the field, like, you know, like you were too weak or something like that. She kind of says it a little flippantly, and he kind of stands up and he's like, oh, you weren't supposed to see that. But then he passes out like right then and there and falls right into her arms, and she holds him. And I can't remember what she says, but it was something a lot nicer.
Yes.
It was something more like, you did a good job.
She says, like, you really gave it your all, didn't you?
Ah, you're right.
Yeah,
you really gave it your all, didn't you? Which is like, this time you really did do your best, and your best is winning.
Yes.
It's not what you were doing before, you know?
She recognizes the effort rather than dismissing it like she was before.
Exactly. But she can only do this when she knows he's not listening and when no one else is around, right? So she's got some image things that she's keeping up with herself.
Cold exterior, but inside maybe a little softer.
Inside very much softer. And you know that she probably showed a lot more of that side when Chapu was around. And that some of the reason why she's so cold now is because he's gone. And if he was still around, we would see a very different Lulu than the one that we see now.
Right.
But even still, it does come out from time to time. And this is one of those really, really tender moments. I really liked it.
I also really like, they kind of cut back to this in a second where, you know, he's kind of like, she's like supporting him. And he wrote a message on the wall. He said, my best memories are here, Waka, captain of the Aurochs. Because he told everybody, this is my last tournament. I'm retiring after this. I promised myself I'd be done with Blitzball after this tournament. So this is his last time. He's like reminiscing about his love of Blitzball and all the years he's played in these tournaments. And it's just a nice moment. She kind of helped him, you know, over to write that message. So it warms me up to the character, Lulu, a little more. Like the fact that she does have a little bit of softness inside, right?
Yep.
So then we cut to the stadium, and Auron arrives.
Yes.
In slow motion.
I love it. You just see his feet first, and then he comes out. He looks so cool. Yes, he looks so cool, man.
He's awesome.
But he's just watching, just chilling.
So, okay. This game, especially being the first Blitzball game you play, if this is your first time playing the game.
The game.
It is a hard game to win.
Oh, it is. It's menu. It's weird navigating the whole thing, and this is the main reason why. I didn't even notice. Well, I probably did notice this before, but the most annoying thing is the fixed cameras.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
If I had a free camera, like we were just talking about how great the fixed camera is for this, because it's
For
similar
Blitzball,
to the pre-rendered backgrounds.
Not so much as running around on a map.
Yeah, the Blitzball, you need a free camera to play the sport, or have at least a wide view that sees everything.
Yeah.
But having them keep cutting everywhere you go, the camera keeps cutting, and it's hard to tell exactly when it's going to cut and where you're going, and you can't see where the other players are.
Yep.
Really, really frustrating.
Yep. And anyways, your teammates aren't good. Like,
I know, they're so bad.
the team you're playing on is bad. It's your first time playing, trying to get used to how it works. The odds are stacked against you. It's almost like you're kind of supposed to lose or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But you can win, especially if you got the eject shot earlier.
Yes.
So if you survive the first half without getting too far behind, right? And Tidus can use eject shot in the second half.
Yeah.
You can win the game. But it is difficult. There are a couple of cool tricks you could employ if you wanted to. Like if you take your character in behind your own goalie, all the characters kind of just spin in place. They like don't know what to do. It's like there's a problem with the programming.
Nice.
So you could just like take the ball and just wait out the first half until
and then get
so it's 0-0.
So they can't score.
Yeah, get your eject shot in the second half, and then go score a goal,
and then take
go
the ball
hide
back. There you
in
go.
the goal. That's
there you
one
go.
option available to you if you really want to win and you're super struggling with this.
Yeah.
However, and this is people who were watching my stream when I was doing this playthrough, I had about the most exciting ending to this Blitzball game.
Did it go to overtime?
Possibly happen, yes.
Mine went to overtime too.
So
yeah,
the Luca goers scored in the first half, so I was behind.
Yes,
I got my eject shot.
Yep.
I go score with that to tie the game up. But you can only really use it once per half because it takes a certain amount of HP away from Tidus.
And Tidus has tons compared to everyone else.
Yeah, but
it's still a lot.
You need a certain amount in order to even do the shot.
Yeah.
So it ended up being tied 1-1 in going into overtime.
And then you got possession first.
Waka is in the game because Waka replaces Tidus towards the end of the second half.
Yeah. And he has a special shot.
He has
too,
a special move too.
I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
it's not as cool.
He has a special move.
Yeah.
And that's what I won on. I won on Waka doing a special shot in overtime to win. It was about the most like cinematic, picturesque, like exciting conclusion for Waka to go out on top in his final game ever.
That was
super
cool.
It was like picture perfect for the story.
It
was
and
awesome.
The crowd, because you're playing as Tidus up and through, I think, a little part of the second half, but then we leave because the crowd is chanting Waka, Waka.
They want him back.
Waka. And I don't know that they would even know who the players are on the Orcs because the Orcs are a nobody team.
Bad.
Right?
Yeah.
But they all apparently are aware of Waka and have been following him and know about his struggles.
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a Cinderella story too, right?
Yes.
So I'm sure a lot of fans are like, "Oh my gosh, the Orcs are going to win. This is going to be crazy."
Waka's going to be And so he comes back in right at the end.
Yeah. So it's awesome. If you win, I'm trying to think if there's a reward for this one, or if I'm thinking about the next tournament, because at the end of this whole sequence, you can go play more Blitzball, which is what I did.
Yeah.
I think you get something. I do think you get something.
You do
I can't
get
remember
something.
what it is, but you get something for winning. Some item or something like that. That it's like, oh, nice, I got that item. It's not like super consequential, though. You don't have to win this turn. But right at the end, after you've won, like fiends start attacking the stadium.
Yeah.
So you end up joining with Auron and fighting them off. But the cool part is the scene
when Auron takes his sleeve out, though.
Yeah.
Like that cutscene is so cool because, you mentioned the samurai connection there, the Ronin connection, and it's like that's cool. But most people would like what I would have assumed, what I did assume when I first played the game, is that his arm's hurt. He just can't use that arm.
Right.
But as soon as he takes it off, you're like, oh, he can use the arm. Anyways, it was really, really cool.
And
I loved it.
The large kimono sleeve, right, is restricting, so he takes it out so that he has more range of motion.
Yes.
This one is tighter on his
still just kind of, you're right.
This sleeve is tighter
it's more
than
tied
this
up.
one is. So
That's true.
he only removes it out of that sleeve so that he has, like full range of motion with his arms.
Yeah. But we fight off a few of them
Yeah.
until Seymour steps forward.
Yes.
Right? And he
summons
does the
Anima.
craziest summon.
Yeah.
I have not, the design of this character is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's like
Aeon.
chained up. It's almost like straight jacket.
Chained, but also there's like
pose.
extra arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, around it. I don't know if those were its arms.
It's like inside of almost like this pod-looking
like a
thing.
cocoon, yeah.
Cocoon. It's like open, and he's like chained up like this, and he's got like a, what do you call it? Like something covering his head, like wraps.
Yeah, like a mummy type thing. Yeah,
but one eye is open. It's bleeding.
Yes.
And he just looks at these monsters and just like zaps them.
And each shot, you can tell it's like horrific seeing Anima at work, because you're like, this is a tortured being here. And as Anima is shooting at the little eye beams at these things, it's not just like Cyclops X-Men. It's not like just like a little laser. It's like a massive force that knocks its own head back. Right. So every time
whiplash.
he shoots, it's hurting him to do this.
Yeah.
It's hurting Anima to do what he does.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely crazy. Now, more about Anima will be revealed later. At that point, we will know why he's called Anima.
Yeah.
Because it is a Carl Jung reference.
Right.
But at the moment, we just see what we see. And it's just the most horrific, creepy, scary looking Ion that I can imagine. And just seeing that and seeing Seymour, and that's his Ion, it's like, okay, Seymour's probably a torturous person himself.
Something more to this guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because he's just like, whatever, I will call from the depths this tortured being to defend me.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, but it's huge. It's huge. And Yuna comments on it later. She's like, Seymour's Ion is so powerful.
Yeah, right.
Like, just beyond belief how powerful he is and his Ion are.
Yeah, it's like an awe-inspiring kind of moment for Seymour's power level. Or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. And Auron's too, by the way, because we get to fight with Auron a little bit, and he just like
tears through
he's
things.
he's very strong.
All right, we're gonna wrap up here with the last couple scenes.
Okay, let's do it. I do have one thing to say really quick about Mika, Master Mika.
Oh yes.
Or Micah. I think he's called Micah. Okay. Yeah. The throne he's sitting on.
Oh yeah.
You see it briefly earlier, not at this point where Seymour's defending him, but you see it maybe in one of those video screens where the games are about to start, right? And he's sitting down. The design of that throne, look at it, think about it, remember it, and then go back to the Bhed mandala at the Bhed Temple and try to see if you can find his throne in that. And you will find it because it's there. And then come back to me about what you think it means.
Nice. Homework for this week, right?
We can slowly piece that mandala together.
I want to.
Luca has a ton of that symbolism, by the way. The Bhed Temple mandala, a lot of those symbols are also all over Luca.
Right.
All over.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
I want to just kind of like get through this because I want to end at the end of the Luca section here.
Okay, let's do it.
I don't know how fast we can do it, but I'll try.
That's all good.
Tidus confronts Auron. Like, this is your fault that I'm here. What is going on?
It's like grabbing him by the shirt.
Like, oh, what'd you do?
You ruined my life.
Right. So he finally has his opportunity to do this.
Yes.
And Auron just kind of laughs at him.
That was actually kind of unsettling.
Yeah.
Where you don't know what to think of Auron.
Yeah.
You don't know who he is. Is he good or bad?
What are his
right?
intentions?
Yes. And he's laughing, and it's kind of a deep, scary laugh, right? And it's just like, dude, what is he doing?
What is his deal?
He obviously knows stuff.
Yeah.
What's his deal? It's crazy. It's really scary.
So he asks him straight up, like, who are you?
Yeah.
And he's like, he explains that he was a guardian with Jecht in Nebraska, and that they went on a pilgrimage and that they defeated sin 10 years ago. Yeah. And then he went to Xanarkand to watch over Tidus until he could be brought here.
Yeah.
And that Jecht was the one who asked him to do it.
Yes.
So
that's important.
Tidus is like, okay, so is he still alive?
Depends on what you mean by alive.
Depends on what you mean by alive, right? Because basically what happened in that finale of their pilgrimage where they defeated sin is that Jecht became sin.
Yes.
This is the bomb.
And this is the reveal.
moment.
This was a huge reveal.
Yeah.
This was a big, big reveal. I got some search your feelings, you know it to be true, kind of like some Star Wars vibes here. But it was really, this isn't really as similar as like Darth Vader and stuff. You did not see Jecht being sin coming.
No way.
you had no idea that was what was going to happen here.
Yeah.
And so I felt like the impact was just spot on. Very, very good.
This obviously shakes Tidus. Like, that's not possible.
Yes.
There's no way.
No, that's impossible.
Right? And in any case, Auron, he tries to ask Auron, well, first he's like, he doesn't really want to go. Like, what if I refuse or whatever? He's like, well, it's your choice or whatever. But I don't really have a choice because you're the only one who explain any of this to me. I don't know how to get back. I don't know what's going on. Like, I have to come with you. He's like, yeah, it's irritating, isn't it? Or are you afraid,
Yeah.
And so he asks him finally, like, Auron, am I ever going to go back home, back to Zanarkand? And Auron says, that's up to Jecht.
Yeah.
So, kind of leaves that a little open-ended there.
Remember that for way later in the game, but
yeah,
it's crazy.
Now, this was the moment at which I was originally waiting to point out the fact that in the opening cutscene, when Zanarkand is destroyed,
yes, I was hoping to come back to this.
We talked about this in spoilers last week, but now that it's not a spoiler anymore, Auron was so expectantly sort of like reacting to Sin's attack, right? He knew it was coming, and we talked about how he was kind of like pointing out Sin as he was approaching. What he's actually doing is he's got a jug of sake that he carries. Yes. He's holding up the jar of sake to Sin, almost in a toasting gesture.
Yeah.
Which is an indication this is his old friend Jecht, who has arrived, and they have a plan. They're doing this for a reason.
Yeah.
Jecht is coming, and Auron has been watching over Jecht's son to bring him to Spira.
This was the point to begin with. This was the purpose.
This was a plan. So Auron knew this was happening, and he was a part of it, and he was like, okay, let's do this. A toasting gesture to his friend Jecht. That was a spoiler before now, which is why I didn't say that.
There's another thing. Well, there's a little more. We'll come back to the destruction of Zanarkand maybe further, closer to the end of the game.
Yeah.
But there's still more stuff we haven't touched on with that yet that's very pertinent to this.
Yeah. That's the thing about that opening, is there's so much packed in it.
I know. And a lot of it just points to the end of the game.
Yeah.
And it's like
there's tons of breadcrumbs in that scene.
So much.
That when you go back and watch it after knowing the full story, it's like, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. And it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's one of the best opening sequences ever.
Is. And especially upon a second playthrough. It's just like, it's mind-blowing what they were able to accomplish. Yeah. Very cool.
So we'll return to it. But anyways, that was the reason why I didn't say that, because I thought it was a spoiler. And usually it's the opposite. Usually I'm saying things and people are like, oh, I can't say that's a spoiler, because I'm not that sensitive to spoilers, but even so, usually it's a context-sensitive sort of thing I'm saying, where it's like, oh, if you don't know already, it's not a spoiler. In this case, I was like, this is definitely a spoiler. Like, I'm not going to say that. And people are in the comments just literally like saying that Sin is Jecht and stuff. And it's like, fetching. Hey, dude, don't read the comments if you've not played this game. Anyway, that was the reason why I didn't say that then. And, maybe I could have pointed out the fact that he's toasting Sin and just not explained the Jecht part of it. But I just felt like I'm just going to play it safe here and not spoil this.
Yeah.
So anyway, a lot of people commented on that in that second episode. That's what's going on. So Auron decides to go offer his services to Yuna. And of course she's going to accept Auron to be her guardian, right?
Like immediately
100%.
Once she realizes.
Yes, please come with us.
And then he drags us. He goes, this kid's coming too.
Yep.
And we're all kind of embarrassed.
Yeah.
Because Auron treats us like a kid, just like Jecht did. And anyways, we kind of don't want. See, Tidus, he's just so conflicted. He does want to come. He knows he has to. But at the same time, he hates not having control over his life.
Yeah.
And so part of him is like, no, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But the other part of him is like, you're going to do it. Just go. You're going to do it.
Particularly knowing now that his father is the beast that they ultimately have to defeat. There's now what's the term I'm thinking of? A conflict of interest.
Very much so, yeah.
And it's also interesting to me that Auron does not reveal this to anyone else.
No.
When
we don't either, really.
Yuna directly asks him, is Jecht still alive? And Auron says, I don't know, I haven't seen him in 10 years.
Haven't seen him in 10 years.
After he just told us, Sin is Jecht. So he's hiding this from the rest of the party. Obviously, well, you could imply from this, because if Tidus is going to come along, he doesn't want the rest of them to know that he knows this and that he could have that conflict of interest, and maybe they wouldn't want him
That's
to be
true.
there.
Then they'd kick him out.
There are other reasons too, which we'll discuss later,
Yeah.
but he does not reveal that Sin is Jacked to anyone else other than Tidus. And Tidus keeps it a secret. I thought that was important to point out.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, he's all depressed and sad, obviously, because what he just learned. And Yuna
doesn't really know why, right?
She's coming up to try and cheer him up. Do you want to scream? No, I don't think it's going to help this time. And she shows him that she can whistle now, you know. She's trying all these things. It's not working. And so she tries to tell him about how, as a summoner, you know, there's all this pressure on me, and sometimes I'm feeling sad and it's overwhelming. Yeah. But I learned to practice smiling when I'm feeling sad, you know? I know it's hard. So she's trying to get him to just
She's so good at that.
smile.
Yes, yeah.
Right? And he's like, he's trying to like,
it's awkward, it's weird.
And she's like, okay, now you have to laugh, right? Now this is the infamous laughing scene.
Very famous, yeah.
And there's a lot of people say that this is like poor acting. It's a poorly acted scene. And it's baffling to me because there's two parts of this that are baffling to me. It's baffling to me that anyone would not realize that it's supposed to be this way.
Part of it is actually incredibly good acting, which is weird.
Like, it was obviously on purpose that it was such an awkward laugh.
Yes.
It was completely on purpose to do this. The fact that anyone would not know that and would think that that's genuine, an attempt at a genuine laugh, but like a failed attempt, where within the same scene they laugh genuinely.
Yes, like a little bit later.
Right after that.
Yes.
Is crazy. It's so crazy that I don't believe it's possible.
I don't think so either. I think I know what happened here. I think people, playing this game again with my wife, as I've mentioned for the 20th time now, I am sensitive to things that are a little bit embarrassing about this game, right? There's just a few things, you know, maybe the way some people dress, the way some people talk, the way some people act. It's a little bit like, it's an anime thing. It's just, you know, whatever. Don't think too much about it, right? This is one of those where the scene happens and you're watching,
laughing at it for the wrong reasons,
and it's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? This is embarrassing, and you feel things that you wouldn't have felt your first playthrough, where it's like, no, it's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be bad. Okay, yeah, it's supposed to be bad. I guess, but it's supposed to be someone who doesn't want to laugh pretending to laugh, and that is exactly what it sounds like.
Yes.
It also sounds like a cow. or a calf or a bird. It sounds like someone trying to do a bird call, you know. Caw, caw, caw.
Especially in Japanese. It's way fetching worse in Japanese.
Now, here's the thing. Hearing the Japanese and then going back and listening to the English, and I'm thinking, the director played him the clip and said, "Okay, now do that the way he did it." And James Arnold Taylor was like, "Okay," and he did it. Perfectly, by the way. Very good acting for what he was told to act, by the way. But yeah, kind of embarrassing to watch, even with somebody who's been playing the game with me up to this point.
Yes.
It is a little bit embarrassing that this happened at all. I don't care if I played the game alone. I wouldn't care. Right. Playing it with somebody else, all of a sudden these things stand out to me in a way where I'm just like, yeah, that's kind of cringy. It's kind of cringy. Yes. And it is. And it's supposed to be.
Yes.
But the fact that it's supposed to be cringy doesn't make it not cringy. Does that make sense?
Yes. So the way I look at this is, because that's always the response from people defending it. It's supposed to be like that.
Yes.
I think everyone knows that.
Clearly.
It's what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't think anyone actually believed that was an attempt at a genuine laugh.
I would hope
But
not.
there is a way to do endearing awkward versus just uncomfortable awkward.
That was uncomfortable.
And this is what people are debating what it feels like. It went into really uncomfortable awkward instead of endearing awkward.
Yes.
I personally, I don't know really where I stand on it because I'm so used to it now. I've played the game a bunch of times.
Yeah,
I'm so like accustomed to it that's like whatever. It doesn't bother me at all.
Right.
I can't really remember my first response to the scene because it was so long ago.
I probably had a little chuckle to myself.
But it does ride that line of just being like uncomfortable. Now there is also a part of it where maybe it is meant to be a little bit uncomfortable because everyone's looking at him. And Yuna's like, you probably shouldn't laugh anymore.
Yes, she does. The second time he breathes in and he does it again, she's like, hey, that's enough.
And that's actually funny.
But she kind of does it too with him a little bit.
He does it the first time, and she's like, you probably shouldn't laugh anymore. And he just turns around and goes, he just goes all in.
Yeah.
So,
oh man,
I liked the scene.
I do too. I wonder, because he's scream laughing.
Yes.
I wonder if there was a little bit of a mixture here. Before he would scream, he's just, he's screaming to let it out. But he doesn't feel like screaming here, but she's telling him to laugh, so he kind of does both, right? Maybe there's a way of understanding it in that way. I would probably have approached this scene from more of like a, ha 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 kind of thing. Like, I'm pretending to laugh, ha ha. He goes, and he goes all out shouting. And it's like
so loud.
And Yuna even remarks, hey, that's a little awkward. You're being weird. And then the other characters, when they come back, they're like, dude, are you okay? Like everyone felt the awkwardness. It wasn't just the game player that's like, ooh, this was accidentally awkward. It's clearly meant to be awkward.
Yes.
But it was just a little too awkward. Kind of like you watch The Office, right?
Right.
And it's like some of those scenes that are supposed to be awkward are kind of hard to watch. They're so awkward.
That's actually something that I think that's really good to bring up.
Yeah.
There are some...
especially the English version of The Office. It's like hard to watch.
Remember like those prank shows that were really popular back in the early 2000s? I think there was one, there's like Jackass, but then there was...
okay, I see what you mean.
There was that other one.
CKY.
Happy... I can't remember. Anyway, there's these prank shows, right? Where they're just going around doing ridiculous things and pranking people. Like, we were inspired by those, and we would go out and do some funny things like that, right? When we'd go film at the freaking mall or at the grocery store or whatever.
Yeah, 20 years ago.
Anyways, that was a big thing at the time. There were some parts of some of those episodes where I felt very uncomfortable watching it. It was like really hard to watch for me. It was like, oh gosh, like that's too far kind of a thing. Right. It's supposed to be funny, but like the line between where it's funny and where it's uncomfortable is different depending on who you are.
Yeah.
I think Parker, because I would talk to him about it sometimes, he really struggles to find a lot of those things funny at all.
Really?
He just feels uncomfortable by it generally. Putting people in situations like that is uncomfortable to him. So what I'm trying to say is that the point, that threshold will be different for everybody. For some people, this is endearing awkward. For some people, it's very uncomfortable awkward. And I don't really blame anyone for feeling that way because I do think that this is not one of those things that is like, the majority are obviously feeling it's endearing. It's like a real split, polarizing kind of scene.
But I do feel like something that is uncomfortable, awkward, in the context of the game, having played the game multiple times, that uncomfortable, awkward can become endearing, awkward over time.
Sure.
Especially as we look back on, this was one of the first voice-acted games
ever.
And,
Right.
And there is something endearing about it to those who care to keep playing the game or understand the context of everything instead of just maybe you played it once when you were 13, never played it again, and you thought that part was stupid. You stopped playing at that part. It's like, okay, fine, and that uncomfortable, whatever. But uncomfortable, awkward can become endearing over time. Over time, I think.
I feel like that's what's happened with me to some degree with this scene. But the sentiment of the scene is very sweet. And
very much so.
A really good relationship building moment for Tidus and Yuna. It's they're drawing closer together bit by bit over time. We talked a little bit in our FF8 podcast about our feelings on how the romance was handled in that game. I'm not super into it. I felt like it wasn't handled particularly all that well. I feel like Final Fantasy romances in general aren't handled that well.
Yeah, 8 was actually good considering Final Fantasy. Yeah, but you know.
I'm liking this so far.
Yeah.
I think that they're doing a pretty good job with it in terms of my view of it on this playthrough. I think there's enough screen time, enough moments between the two of them that is building something that feels convincing. and they're getting closer over time, and they're liking each other more and more. They clearly have some feelings, but it's not being rushed. It's being developed slowly, and I like that. Even just the moment of her learning how to whistle, right?
Yeah.
It was just a short moment.
That reminded me of the Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah.
A little bit.
The grass.
The blade of grass, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like there were just short moments in between them going from the Blitzball arena to where Auron was supposed to be at the cafe, where they just sprinkle some of this in. Yeah. And they're just doing it bit by bit, and I think it's really working so far.
I think so.
So I really like the sentiment of the scene. The delivery could have been done a little better, but
it was done very similar to the Japanese one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So anyways, this is where you go to the Mian High Road. You're going to go to the Jose Temple next.
Yes.
This is where we're going to leave off.
That's where we're going to stop.
For today. I just wanted to address one more thing, because I think you already did a really good job at bringing up comments along the way.
Yes.
And responding to them.
Well, I got one
right here. You got one more? Okay.
I got one right here, which is really cool, because we're past this point now. So episode 3, maybe it was episode 2 actually, had a really good comment from somebody, a user named Oboronyon, 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 I think is how you pronounce it.
Oh, I know this guy. Yeah, okay. I've seen him a lot.
So, a lot of good comments on the word Shin and what it means. I mentioned earlier the word Shi means death. Shinu means to die, right?
Yeah, right.
Also, people mention Shin can be like new or true, truth kind of thing. So you've got that, like, Shinjitsu or Atarashin, right? Like that kind of thing. But then Oboronyon shows up, and I'm like, okay, I get truth and new, and I'm like, okay, but that's not really as relevant to sin, right? Whereas death is like, I am death, right? That is sin. Okay, and it's got some connotation to the American word, or the English word sin. So, like, okay, fine. But Oboronyon shows up and he goes, actually, you know what? There are a few kanji that can be pronounced sin, and you might want to look into them, right? Mm-hmm. So he brings up one, kami. The word kami, God. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And now I mentioned shinigami to show off how the word shin can mean death.
Yes.
Shinigami meaning death god or death angel, right? Well, the other side of it, shinigami, right? Mm-hmm. Kami has multiple readings, right? So the kanji that is typically read kami can mean multiple things, or it can be pronounced multiple ways. And one of those ways is shin. Mm. So there's one great example that Oboronyon gives, which is the religion Shinto, right? Shinto is, you could pronounce it kami-do, right? Would be the way of God, right? Yeah. But they don't, the word kami isn't pronounced kami there, it's pronounced shin. This is one of the really hard things about Japanese, by the way. The characters don't always make the same sound for kanji, and that's very difficult for a lot of people. But shin is a reading for within Shinto's the way of God kind of thing. And shin means God in that sense. But then there's another one, and this one absolutely blew my mind. So Tidus uses a word to address his father. The word is oyaji, right? Oyaji. Yeah. Oyaji means my old man. It's a rude-ish way to refer to your father. Right. You would say oto-san or oto-sama, something like that. Would make a little more sense if you're referring to him in the third person. But he says oyaji. Now the important thing about that is that that's made up of two parts. There's oya and ji. Oya means parent.
Yeah.
Well, would you believe it that there's another reading for the kanji for parent that's shin? It's
no
that exact
way.
thing. Yes.
Serious?
Oya meaning parent, which is the normal word for parent. The onyomi, which is the Chinese reading of that same kanji, which they use in Japan. It's called the Chinese reading, but Japan uses it all the time, is shin.
No way.
Yes.
What the fuck?
So this is great. So put yourself in the perspective of somebody who speaks a language where shin can mean a dozen different things. One of them is parent. One of them can be something like death or truth or new. One of them is God, right? And then that word is translated into English as sin,
yes,
which is kind of different from what it meant in the Japanese. It didn't mean anything because once again, it's written in katakana.
Yeah.
So they're not using this kanji. But the Japanese people, when you hear the katakana, you're thinking of the language. You grow up in the language. Yeah. You know the kanji that could be used to make that same sound.
So you can have the double meaning of father and death, or father and God, or whatever.
Yes, it means all of that.
That's crazy.
All at once. But I couldn't believe it. Oberonyon found, and he claims he tries to play himself down. He's like, oh, I accidentally stumbled across it. Like, yeah, right, dude, you're a freaking beast. I would not have found that connection in a very long time. But there is the onyomi for Oya is Shin, and he calls his father Oyaji. Anyways, unbelievable. Very, very cool. That
is really cool.
Yes, very cool, but also a little spoilery, I gotta say. Maybe this sin is your father hits harder for American audience than it would have for the Japanese audience, already understanding that Shin could mean parent in some other way, some other reading of the word.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
and really,
crazy.
Really cool.
Yeah, super cool.
Okay, sweet. So the only other thing I wanted to respond to, probably one of the more common comments that we got on episode 3 was the the whole Roman Empire thing.
Yeah.
So I've actually watched this back because I was genuinely confused why anyone believed that, particularly you, but like either of us thought that the ancient Roman Empire and the Holy Roman Empire were the same thing.
That the ancient Roman Empire ended in 1806.
I don't think that. I never thought that.
It was a short, brief segment. We mentioned it, and probably could have been a little more specific.
Sure, and in an unscripted format, sometimes you're not as clear as you should be, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm just clearing this up. I know that they're not the same thing. Ancient Roman Empire was split into two, the Eastern and Western. This happened like 350 or something like that.
390, something like that.
Something like that. And the Western fell in 476 or something like that. The Eastern continued as the Byzantine Empire, which you even said in the segment.
I know. But
so I don't know why people don't know that you know that.
It's all good. But
then in like 800 Charlemagne or whatever, I think, was the Pope crowned a new Western emperor again, and that became the Holy Roman Empire, which was a new thing.
Yes.
I know
now
that.
Explain what you did mean when you said that thing, connecting the 1,000 years and all that.
The context of the conversation we were having was how much things change in 1,000 years. So imagine somebody from the 4th century or something being transported to 1300 something, and there being a Roman Empire, but it's not the one that you knew.
In fact, it's not even close.
It's not.
It's basically
at
not
all the same
the
thing.
Roman Empire.
The point was to show how different the things are, and that's a 1,000-year period.
Yes, but it was still called
that they're the same thing.
Okay, there we go.
I don't get it. I'm not trying to rail on anybody. I just genuinely did not understand how anyone pulled from what we said, because I watched it back again.
But several people did, though, so there must have been something there.
I guess so. I have to admit that, because it was miscommunicated and many people misunderstood. So obviously it's my fault to whatever degree. But what I said was, it continued in a way. But what I believe that to mean is not technically.
What did you mean by that?
Not technically, but in a way, because the Pope was reviving a Western emperor again with Charlemagne and then Otto after that. So I didn't mean they're the same empire. I know that that's not the same thing. Okay? I am not historically illiterate. I am also not a history buff, the same way that you are, and the same way that like Pat Holloman is, or something like that.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things about history I don't know, and I think that's fine, because I'm not trying to be a history guy, but I'm not stupid enough to not know that the Roman Empire fell. Okay? That's all I'm trying to say here. Thank you very much for watching our podcast.
Peace out.
We'll talk to you next time. See you later.